Hello and welcome back to the Powered by Football podcast, your favourite Power Chair football podcast hosted by Jackson Taylor. On today's episode, we have got some very exciting matches for you. We have got Hills United versus the Newcastle Jets, and we have got the Western Sydney Wanderers versus Football St George. We have also got a interview with Aseem Soti of Hills United, so that's very fun. I also would like to apologize before we get into the meat of the episode per se. I phrased a bit wrong in last week's episode that last week was going to be the last Matchday Roundup for a little bit. I thought that the way I was conveying it was clear, but upon re-listening and upon feedback from others, it wasn't. This is the last Matchday Roundup for a little bit. We're going to have 2 weeks off after this with some different episodes in the works to be put there instead. So now that I've cleared that up and we can understand that, we'll get into the episode proper. First game of the weekend, Hills United and the Newcastle Jets. The start of the game was delayed because of the speed which Lockie's chair was at, 14.4 kilometers per hour. So he was able to play. They tweaked some stuff. I'm not 100% sure, what was changed, but he was cleared. And after that was all fixed, he was set to play. The game started, and there was just immediate pressure from the Hills, but it broke down due to 2-on-1s. There was a chance for Newcastle, which was cleared well by Hills minutes later, which was headed towards an open goal, but it bounced off the wrong side of the post to go out for a goal kick. And then after that, there was a corner from the speedy man himself, Lockie Ninham, which met Prayag Sharma well, squeezing the ball between the Newcastle defence. There was some strong Hills pressure after this, but it amounted to nothing. And then just right before the break, there was a free kick in an awkward position given away by the Jets, which goes right across the face of goal, pounced upon by the goal scorer from before, Prayag Sharma. He gets his second, and the Hills go 2-0 up. Some strong pressure from Hills forces a corner in the opening minutes of the second half, and they just weren't able to convert from that. But minutes later, the Hills continue this pressure, and a miss-hit pass from the Newcastle defence lands directly to Alyssa Galea, and she sends the Hills 3-0 up. And then that was the full-time score. The Hills defeating the Newcastle Jets 3-0. These defeats just getting smaller for Newcastle, showing the growth of these kids. And it'll be, as I said last week, it's been really great to see them improve as the season's gone on. And I look forward to seeing their continuation as the season progresses. Moving over to the premiership game between Hills United and the Newcastle Jets. And there was a high chance for Newcastle in the opening minutes, but, their strong passing just didn't come to anything, and it went out for a Hills goal kick. Minutes later, some strong passing from Newcastle forced a corner, which didn't amount to anything for Newcastle. There was some contact from Anlazak, which gave Hills a attacking free kick in their final third. Rather than giving a goal to Hills, it spurred a strong counter for Newcastle, which amounted to nothing. Contact caused a free kick in an incredibly tight angle for Newcastle, which they were unable to convert. A save on the line from Aseem Soti. Some strong passing from Newcastle forces a corner from another save on the line. Aseem was playing out of his skin in this game, I think, and especially in this first half, he was having save after save. He was doing very, very well. There was a 2-on-1 giving Newcastle one last chance before the break, but it was saved well by the aforementioned Aseem Soti. And at the break, it was 0-0 between Hills United and the Newcastle Jets. Upon the return of the game, there was a strong set piece which forced a save on the line from Matt Mallows. So that Newcastle attack just prying, trying to get through, but they just weren't able to for a long while. That is until the corner which Matt saved allowed for Chris Hastas to sneak the ball through the Hills defensive line, sending his side 1-0 up. I think it was a good goal, and Newcastle had been applying that pressure for a long while, so they did definitely deserve to get a goal. Not long after that, a strong set piece just carves through the Hills line with Ryan Sack meeting Chris Hastas well, getting his second, completely putting a statement onto that game. Towards the end of the game, Newcastle decided to bring on some of their reserve grade players to get them some experience. It was really nice. Seeing some of those younger kids getting some experience at the state level, I was quite happy to see some of those kids come on and get that experience. And just before the end of the game, there was a strong passing display from the Hills, and Aseem Soti was just not able to get there. I think had he gotten to the ball, the shot would have been on target, I reckon, and he would have been able to get a consolation. But alas, these things don't always come to fruition, and the full-time whistle blew with the Newcastle Jets beating Hills United 2-0. I interviewed the goalkeeper, Aseem Soti, that I mentioned previously, about his performance in this game. Here's that clip.
My name's Aseem Soti, I'm 16 years old, and I play for the Premiership team at Hills United.
So Aseem, at the very start of the day, there was some dramas with one of your teammates locking in him with his chair being a bit too fast. He's just got a new chair, so did that give you a bit of a scare?
Oh, definitely, because Lockie, he's one of our best players, right? He's got a lot of talent, he's great in attack, and so we need him to obviously be fast, but we also need him to be able to control the chair and actually be allowed to play. So, those issues with the chair speed was definitely a bit of a scare, because I know at Nationals as well, my chair did not pass the speed test. I went way too fast, and that was also a scare. So I know that, controlling your speed is very important in the sport, but the team, was a bit shaky about the chair speed.
Yeah, I think obviously being fast is good, but not too fast.
Yeah, you have to be able to control it.
Yeah, so into that Prem's game now, and look, in that first half, I think Hills did very well. You held on quite well. What do you think made the sort of tides turn and give Newcastle a result there?
Look, I don't actually know if anything really changed. I think we did our job. I think we played pretty much the same, both halves. I think Newcastle Jets, I wasn't really feeling like they were doing very much different. I think at the end of the day, it really just came down to, those micro judgments, very small things in the middle of the game that just lead to either the goal going behind the post or a near save. It was a very end-to-end game the entire time, but I think it's just those small lapses of judgment that caught us out.
Yeah, because you had a lot of good saves throughout that game.
We did.
You kept him quiet for that first 20 or so.
Yeah, you could hear Dimitri.
Man.
He was not happy with it.
He was not happy in that first half. And another thing I want to talk to you about, because I think it's a very fun aspect of watching you as a player, your front wheels.
Yes.
Are they a distraction tactic?
Yeah, so actually, when you think about it, right, the colors on the wheels, right, it's got blue, red, green, right, and it's very flashy, so it's very vibrant, right? The whole idea is that the other players, right, when they're in a tussle, you know how you're trying to look at the ball, right? And the ball's usually sat really close to the wheel on your guard. So the whole idea is, right, that you kind of just like get distracted for a second. You're like, oh, those are some nice wheels, right? And then suddenly, I've just flown past you.
Yeah, okay.
No, I'm kidding. They're purely aesthetic.
Okay.
I don't know. They just look nice. And they make me faster. Trust. They make me faster.
Yeah, sure. So the last question I wanted to talk to you about, because obviously you mentioned before playing with Hills at Nationals.
Yes.
So how important do you think that was, like, to growing as a player?
Oh, definitely. I think if you compare our performance, if you compare my performance and even the team's performance, before and after Nationals, it's like a black and white difference. It's very clear. I think also being now in more of an attacking position, coming out from my previous club, where I was more in the defense, and also playing in reserve grades most of the time. So I think this gave me a lot of exposure to, a much higher level of play, because we also had people from like England coming to play with us. So even off the field, I think there was a lot to learn, talking to, some of the best in the world. Talking to some of the best in the country, playing against them. I think it's just, I got a lot of that exposure that I really needed to get better. And I'm hoping that's translating onto the pitch now. Hoping so, yeah.
Well, they say you're only as good as your best opponent, so I think it helps you a lot. I remember I was commentating a few of your games up there, and it was really nice to just see you getting that sort of exposure, because obviously I know you've been in the sport for a few years now. So I was really happy that you got that chance.
Yeah, thanks.
So I believe that concludes this interview, Aseem. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
We're going to win the championship, man.
Okay.
Sorry, the premiership. We're going to win the premiership. And the championship.
Okay,
and all the ships.
Okay then.
Yeah.
I appreciate the enthusiasm.
Yep.
And yeah.
Bye, guys. Have fun. Have a good night or day. I don't know. If you're watching this at 1 a.m., go to sleep.
Very professional there from you, Aseem. Moving over to the afternoon games, and we start off with the Western Sydney Wanderers versus Football St George Championship match. And firstly, before we get into the game itself, I'd like to thank Chris Suffield for taking notes for me for these two games, as obviously as a Wanderers player, I was committed to playing in these games. So without further ado, let's get into the game itself. Wanderers were withstanding some early pressure, but just, applying some themselves not long after. 3 minutes in, Rameth Hereth hits the post. End-to-end stuff early on with myself and Finn O'Donovan controlling the middle of the park. And a few minutes later, Rameth Hereth pounced on a loose goal kick, just getting it past the St George defence to send the Wanderers 1-0 up. And while St George had some good defence afterwards, there was a 2-on-1 chance that they created. Hereth pounced on this chance, punching the rebound home from a shot which I had, sliding between the defenders 2 minutes after the first goal, sending the Wanderers 2-0 up. And according to Chris, I love this phrasing, it's all Wanderers, with St George struggling to get out of defence. I think we, especially in that first half, I felt that the Wanderers were really applying pressure. I felt like I had a good, control of that match at the start. Ollie McPhail comes on and takes an early shot, winning a corner, but they just weren't able to find a good delivery. Something very funny, which I do love that Chris added in here. When this corner was about to be taken, I noticed him and Matt Mallows there, and I asked if they could give me a hand to take notes, not knowing that they already were sorting this out. And Chris has written, Taylor is more worried about his podcast than the game, asking Suffield and Mallows to take notes while he's defending a corner. Cheers, I appreciate the humility there. Yes, I did ask that. Probably should have been focusing on the game, but we did not concede from that corner. Both teams are looking towards half-time after this chance, trading goal kicks, but, nothing troubling the goalies. Ibu Khan makes a good save off the line to limit the damage right before half-time. 2-0 was the score so far. St George making a few changes to get back into the game at half-time, but I, continued that pressure on in the middle of the park, and the half-time whistle declared that the Wanderers would be 2-0 up on Football St George. Upon the return of the game, St George grew into confidence. Ibrahim Khan taking a few shots. Myself and Hereth defending well together, according to Chris Suffield. I appreciate that compliment there. Have some more influence on the game too, with Mitch Albert coming on in the second half, and they were controlling a lot more field possession, St George, but they just weren't converting any chances. Reyes was dribbling the length of the field at one point, winning a free kick for a St George 2-on-1. Reyes hit Meta with a rocket of a cross, but he wasn't able to direct it on target. Jay's a good kid. He's still learning the sport. He played a little while ago, and I think he's got good potential. But, once we train him up a bit more, he'll be able to convert chances like that. And there's another good save from Rameth Hereth to maintain the Wanderers' 2-0 advantage. There's a good shot from Jesse Eze shooting at the far post after a deflection before Jay Meta shoots again, going just wide. Craig Kilby makes a lucky save, giving the Wanderers a late corner with, a few minutes left. Just real action-filled game, this one, making a strong save. St George built some late pressure, though, in the 39th minute with Finn O'Donovan finding Ibu Khan, slotting it between the two defenders. A real heart-in-your-mouth sort of stuff for the Wanderers now. With about a minute left, just hoping to keep that win. I was sitting on the bench at the time, and I was freaking out a lot. I really wanted this win. We needed a win in this competition, and some strong defending after an attacking first half got the job done for the Wanderers. The full-time whistle blew, and there's a break after the goal, but it didn't amount to anything. And the full-time whistle declared the game end at 2-1 to the Western Sydney Wanderers. Moving over to the final game of the day, the Western Sydney Wanderers versus Football St George in the Premiership. And the Wanderers clear the opening minute of pressure. There's a strong clearance from Steve Webb. And then after that, Abdullah Karim and Chris Turnbull link up, creating a shot, but got too close, giving away a 2-on-1. Just that sort of really strong pressure in the opening minutes. St George definitely dominant at the start there. Steve Webb made a bit too much contact with Mitch Albert. Karim finding him for the free kick. Drawing a good save from Steve. Andy Waite makes a good save just after. We were holding on, but we were making a few good saves, those two guys, with me not being in the defensive partnership at the time. Karim picking out Turnbull not long after for a shot, taking the following hit in before his teammates are set, with a bit of a chance wasted there. Karim and Albert linking up nicely on the break not long after, but Andy Waite well positioned to save a deflected shot. Steve makes a great reversing save, taking out the post in the process. I love that anger and that passion from Steve to keep it at 0-0. The Wanderers under a lot of pressure, and the pressure tells. According to Chris, Waite pushed the ball out of defence, but plays a loose pass that Karim jumps on to open the scoring from distance. Abdullah Karim does what Abdullah Karim does. I know I've said it a few times on this podcast. He makes a moment, Abs. So it was very dramatic from him to send St George 1-0 up, and he just kept that control on Karim. Middle of the park was locked down by him. The Wanderers letting him shoot again. Turnbull splitting the defence from a sideline, forcing Webb into a stretching save for another corner. Jordan Crane finds Karim from the corner. The ball squeezing between Webb and the near post, bouncing between the chair and the post. It was Look, I'd never seen a goal like it. I don't like praising it when it was against my own team, but, it was a very good goal, very strange goal, to be honest. I've never seen anything like it, as I said, but it's, fair play to him, I guess. And the last 5 minutes of the half is just all St George. The Wanderers hardly getting out of their own half. Vidakovic makes a good save from a dribbling Steve Webb in the box right upon the halftime whistle, and the Wanderers had it all to fight for, with a 2-0 deficit being down against Football St George at halftime. The Wanderers start the half with a better field position, far more composed with the ball, but they can't stop the transitions from St George up the court. The Wanderers fighting their way out of pressure up the court, drawing a free kick from a 2-on-1. I deflected a nice free kick from Steve Webb to Jono Reyes, but it was saved well by Vidakovic. After that, a few minutes later, Abdullah Karim winning a penalty as Steve Webb ran into him trying to save. Karim belted into the corner to score, getting his hat-trick, sending St George 3-0 up. The intensity flattened a bit after this goal, but Andy Waite made two good saves off of Abdullah Karim and Chris Turnbull. Steve Webb reverses up the court following a clearance, finding Jono Reyes in the box, but it was saved well by Vidakovic. Speaking of, Vidakovic has to deflect a key shot from a corner not long later, and Jono Reyes just somehow put the rebound in between the defence. I don't think he meant to do it on purpose, but a goal's a goal at the end of the day, and he won't be complaining about it. So that got him a bit of a consolation for the Wanderers with an even second half. The Wanderers were rewarded for their efforts with a late goal, the full-time score being 3-1 to Football St George. Moving over to the championship table and statistics now, and in the table first place is held by Sydney FC. They have 5 wins, 0 draws and 0 losses. They have 15 points. Hills United sits second. They have 3 wins, 1 draw and 1 loss. They have 10 points. The Western Sydney Wanderers sit third. They have 2 wins, 2 draws and 2 losses. They have 8 points. Football St George sit fourth. They have 2 wins, 1 draw and 3 losses. They have 7 points. And the Newcastle Jets sit fifth with 0 wins, 0 draws and 6 losses on 0 points. On the statistics for the championship, and who else but Riley Brown leads the goal scorers chart. He has 12 for Sydney FC. Second place is taken up by Hills United's Lachie Ninham. He has 7. And a tie for second between Hills United's Prayal Sharma and Sydney FC's George Tiong, both on 5. Onto the assist chart now, and Finn O'Donovan of Football St George and George Tiong of Sydney FC are tied for first. They both have 5. Sydney FC's Riley Brown and Lachie Ninham of Hills United are tied for second. They both have 3. And Fletcher Ball of Sydney FC sits in third with 2. Onto the clean sheets now, and Cody Town of Sydney FC leads that. He has 4. Ollie McPhail of Football St George and Lachie Ninham of Hills United sit in second, both on 2, and a 3-way tie for third between the Western Sydney Wanderers' Jay Meta, Hills United's Bailey Pete, and Harry Simmons of Sydney FC. Moving over to the Premiership table and statistics in the table first, the Newcastle Jets sit first. They have 4 wins, 1 draw and 1 loss. They have 13 points. Football St George sits second. They have 3 wins, 3 draws and 1 loss. They have 12 points. Sydney FC sit third. They have 3 wins, 1 draw and 2 losses. They have 10 points. The Western Sydney Wanderers sit fourth. They have 1 win, 2 draws and 4 losses. They have 5 points. And Hills United sit fifth with 1 win, 1 draw and 4 losses on 4 points. Moving over to the statistics now. And first place is a tie between Football St George's Abdullah Karim and Sydney FC's Daniel O'Brien. They both have 8. Second place is taken up by the Western Sydney Wanderers' Andy Waite. He has 5. And a 3-way tie for third between Football St George's Jordan Crane and the Newcastle Jets' Chris Hastis and Dimitri Leolio-Davis, all on 4. Onto the assist chart, and that is led by Fletcher Ball of Sydney FC. He has 5. Second place is a 2-way tie between Football St George's Abdullah Karim and the Newcastle Jets' Ryan Seck. And third place is a 2-way tie between the Newcastle Jets' Shannon Anlazark and Sydney FC's Joshua Ryan, both on 3. Onto the clean sheets chart now, and Ryan Seck of the Newcastle Jets leads that. He has 4, and Joshua Ryan of Sydney FC sits in second with 1. That concludes today's episode of the Powered by Football podcast. I hope you enjoyed very, very much. We will see you next week, hopefully with a fun special interview episode that I'm working on. I'm going to keep that a surprise for next week, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, let's just get into the end card. Have a good one. You can get involved in Power Chair football here in New South Wales as an athlete, coach, referee or volunteer by visiting the New South Wales Power Chair Football Association website, linked in the show notes. Our season takes place in Glenwood at the Valentine Sports Park from the 15th of February 2025 to the 12th of July 2025 every Saturday. Contact info@nswpfa.org.au for more information. Just a quick note that the views of this podcast are mine and mine alone. The opinions and thoughts expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the NSWPFA. If you want to get in touch with the podcast, you can follow us at Powered by Football Pod on Instagram, join our Facebook group, Powered by Football Podcast, or follow our Twitter account, Powered by Pod. Thanks for listening.